What's up, guys? I'm back with a review of the second episode of the Dinosaurs on Netflix. First, a quick overview of what happened in this episode. Then, talk about what's good and not so good. Finally, wrapping up with a few interesting ideas the episode introduces. If you haven't seen my review of episode 1, you can check it out at the link here. Now, let's jump right into episode 2. The episode picks up exactly where the first one left off. Huge volcanic eruptions throw the world into chaos, triggering widespread environmental disaster. This period of extreme volcanism leads to a global mass extinction, wiping out the entire families of pseudotsuchians. Dinosaurs and pterosaurs, however, managed to endure. By the beginning of the Jurassic period, around 199 million years ago, sauropods like Volcanodon appear, sharing landscapes with more basal relatives Mosaspondylus. Smaller dinosaurs like Heterodontosaurus fill the role of small herbivores. In the swamps, a male Dilophosaurus attempts to prove himself to be a potential mate. Before long, another global crisis strikes. Extreme heat and wildfires devastate ecosystems, wiping out many of the more primitive sauropodomorphs. The timeline then jumps to 160 million years ago, as Laurasia and Gondwana continue to drift apart. In East Asia, a herd of giant Mamenchisaurus awakens from a nap. A Scioraptor attempts to snatch an Anchiornis for an easy meal, but the smaller dinosaur manages to glide away, only to be caught and eaten later by a pterosaur. Finally, we move to 153 million years ago, in Jurassic North America, where Allosaurus reigns as a top predator. One individual fails to take down Stegosaurus, and is severely wounded in the process. In a grim turn, a smaller Allosaurus finishes off its larger counterpart, engaging in cannibalism. So that's pretty much everything that happened in episode 2. Many awesome dinosaur species appear in the show, some very iconic. What is your favorite species? Please let me know in the comments. Now moving on to my favorite parts of the show. Number 1, I really like the dinosaur behaviors depicted in this episode, especially those of Allosaurus. The show highlights some compelling intra-species interactions. For example, during a confrontation, a smaller individual exposes its belly to a larger one, a classic submissive display seen in many modern animals. Later in the episode, Allosaurus is shown killing and consuming one of its own. This is a great detail, as fossil evidence suggests that Allosaurus likely engaged in cannibalism, particularly under environmental stresses. So including this behavior adds a nice layer of realism. Number 2, I also appreciate the inclusion of Mamenchisaurus, especially the way its neck posture was portrayed. The show presents its neck in a straighter and more upright position than is traditionally depicted, which aligns better with current interpretations of sauropod neutral posture. This is not because the neck itself is highly flexible, but rather due to the angle of the torso and the structure of the shoulder girdle. Mamenchisaurus had relatively large shoulder girdles compared to its forelimbs, likely anchoring strong muscles needed to support its extremely long neck. More recent constructions also suggest a higher shoulder position, meaning it wouldn't need to rely as heavily on neck muscles to achieve the elevated posture. Number 3, Mosaspondylus. This is probably the best looking basal sauropodomorph I've ever seen portrayed in a TV show. The skin textures are excellent, the animation feels smooth, and I especially love the modeled color palette, a mix of lime green and warm grays that's really lifelike. On top of that, many of the strengths from the first episode continue here. The show does a great job depicting environmental change, particularly towards the end of the early Jurassic. I believe the event they're referencing here is the Toarcian oceanic and noxic event, which is rarely covered in dinosaur documentaries, so I definitely give them credit for including it. At the same time, the visual effects remain strong for the most part, continuing the high level of quality established earlier. As for what I didn't like, there honestly isn't much, but a couple things did stand out. My least favorite aspect was the design of Allosaurus. It seems to be a modified version of the model used in Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and Dominion. While the overall body proportions have been adjusted to better match real-world anatomy, it still retains oversized lower legs and feet, a very common issue in Hollywood dinosaur designs that I also mentioned in my review of the first episode. I don't like the two-faced look they gave it. It's true that Allosaurus lived a rough life. Many fossil specimens show evidence of injuries and pathology. However, having half of its cheek missing feels a bit excessive. The exposed teeth also show that the animal has far too many teeth in the upper jaw, with the tooth row extending too far back past the eye socket, something not seen in derived theropods like Allosaurus. On top of that, there's no evidence that theropods had crocodile-like rows of osteoderms along the back. I really wish the creators had taken the opportunity to redesign more scientifically accurate Allosaurus, instead of tweaking an existing model. If you want to see what real Allosaurus proportions look like, check out my video on the Carnegie Museum's Jurassic Dinosaurs. I'll leave a link on screen. Next, the gliding Anchiornis. Recent studies suggest that Anchiornis was probably incapable of true flight or gliding. While flapping its wings may have helped it run faster or jump higher, full-on gliding is unlikely. In the same scene, it's hunted by Signraptor, which raises a couple issues. Signraptor isn't known from this part of East Asia, and more importantly, no large carnivores have been definitively identified from Anchiornis ecosystem so far. It also seems unlikely that a predator of the size would pursue such a small prey. So that wraps up my main criticisms. Now let's move on to some interesting details and creative decisions in the episode. Heterodontosaurus is depicted with long filaments along its back and tail, likely inspired by early interpretations of its relative Tianyulong. However, an alternative interpretation suggests that Tianyulong may have been very fuzzy overall, and the long filaments we see in fossils could be a result of just preservation. The show also gives Heterodontosaurus cheek pouches like a rodent. It's purely speculative, and dinosaurs likely didn't have that kind of excessive facial tissue. In the Dilophosaurus environment, we see Spanish moss hanging from trees. While it certainly adds to the swampy vibe, Spanish moss is a flowering plant and wouldn't have existed in early Jurassic. Stegosaurus features some unusual plate patterning. The design is visually striking, but it would have been great to see that reflected with layered, keratin-like textures, similar to what we observe in modern reptiles. So that about sums it up for episode 2. This episode features even more animals than episode 1, including some of my favorites like Mamenchisaurus. And I enjoyed it just as much as the first. I'm definitely looking forward to the next episode, which takes place in the early Cretaceous. And lastly, wow, I just realized this show is essentially revisiting some of the classic scenes from Walking with Dinosaurs. Even a few of the story beats feel almost identical. Early dinosaurs competing with Pseudosuchians, and Allosaurus squaring off against a Stegosaurus. It's something that only clicked for me after watching the first 2 episodes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.